right, class. Hello, Brody Philpott here, and I'd like to talk to you today about leadership and management. Specifically, I want to talk about how management can motivate employees to be high-achieving employees. What environments can we put them in order to produce top performers? And what tools can we use in order to help us along the way with this endeavor? I want to start off today with a quote from Daniel Pink. He's a social scientist who has studied motivation and what motivates people in his book, Drive. And I want to start off today with this quotation, which will tie everything in together for us today. The question so many people ask, namely, how do I motivate people to learn, to do their chores, to take their medicine? These are the wrong questions because they assume that motivation is something that is done to people, sort of like our picture up here. The manager is poking the guy from behind with a fork and enticing him with a carrot in the front. It assumes that motivation is something that is done to people instead of something that people do. And I hope to challenge you today to think about motivation, maybe in ways that you've never considered before. And consider whether we are motivating employees the right way to get the right result. Now, as managers, our attitude shapes the culture. It shapes the culture of our businesses and our teams, and it sets the environment that allows our employees to be successful or fail. I took a great management class by a lady named Jan Baller. She is a management consultant, and she told me that people leave their managers. They do not leave their companies. And that the number one predictor of motivation and of job satisfaction with their employees is that employee's relationship with their manager. So if that's the case, if our relationship with our employees and what we do for them is that important, are we doing it the right way to achieve the right results? What environments can we create as management that will produce happy, highly driven, successful employees? So I want to start off today talking about Daniel Pink and his book Drive. And he did a couple of tests. And he went to MIT, he took his team of researchers, and he went to MIT and he took a bunch of students. And with these students, he said, I'm going to see what motivates these students. And he gave them a cash prize, a bonus. He said, okay, if you do this small thing, like let's say stacking blocks, however many you stack in an hour, you get this bonus. If you do a word puzzle, you get this much. And if you do something else, you get a higher level cash prize, something like $50 or $100. Now, you would expect that to be motivated, the people with the highest amount of cash prize actually perform the best. But this is actually the opposite of what they found. They found that those with the highest cash prize actually performed the worst. This flies in the face of what we think about motivation. So they thought, okay, well, we'll take this. Maybe the cash prize wasn't big enough to really motivate them. So they took the whole experiment and they took it to rural India and they did the same thing. Except this time the prizes were 1 month's salary, 2 months' salary, 3 months' salary, very significant amounts of money. And they found actually exactly the same thing. The higher the amount of money, they performed even worse than the MIT students did. And this got him thinking about motivation in general. And our traditional bonus structure, does that really work anymore? And they found that anytime you need a higher cognitive thinking, any sort of critical thinking, that a bonus does not work for that. It can work for a mechanical. If you turn the lever 50 times an hour, you'll get a bonus, but it does not work for critical thinking. So he researched companies that had high-performing employees, and he found that all companies that have high-performing employees have 3 characteristics about them. And those characteristics are autonomy, mastery, and purpose. You can think of autonomy as being the will to direct your own life. Every person has a will that they want to have some say over how their life goes and what they do. Mastery says that I have a will to get better at something. People have an innate need to get better at something. This is why they have hobbies, or they play musical instruments, or they go mountain climbing. They need something to challenge them, to push them, to get better at something. And you need a purpose. Basically, people need a reason for getting out of bed in the morning. This is a transcendent purpose that drives your life. That may sound ivory tower, but it can be as simple as taking care of my family. But think about, to put these, really internalize these, think about what happens if you don't have them. You become like my pictures down here at the bottom. If you have no autonomy, you become an automaton. You become this little picture of a robot where he has no control over his life. The power is completely outside of him. He is just doing what people tell him to do. That can lead to despair. If you have no mastery, you're like this little guy who's always dropping the ball. I don't think people want to come into work every day and do poorly at their jobs. I think they want to do well at their jobs. They want to be able to do something that is important and is valued and that they are good at. And think if you have no purpose. If you have no purpose in life, then what's it all for? They've also found that when purpose becomes unmoored from profit, really bad things happen. Not only wars or horrible genocides or things like that, but just generally bad things as far as business goes. Bad products happen. So we need these levels of autonomy. We need to feel that we are good at it, and we need to have a reason for doing it. So as management, what can we do to help provide an environment that allows this, and to provide some tools that can help build our employees towards receiving this? Now, if we're going to have a situation where we have an environment in our businesses of autonomy, mastery, and purpose, what will kill that is a control-oriented environment. This is the old environment where the boss has all the knowledge, they tell the employee exactly what to do, and that they shouldn't think about it, just go do what I say. That will not lead to a highly successful, highly driven employee. So we have to rethink our purposes of the control-oriented environment. Now, this is not to say that we should not have internal controls. I'm a huge internal control guy. But it means that we should not stifle people. We should allow them to have the ability to run their own lives and do well at their job, but we should also hold them accountable for doing it. Now, this is an idea where self-motivation is a necessity. So if we need employees that are self-motivated, are we stuck as management just simply trying to find them and going through employees until we do? Are there tools that we can use to help people along the way to become these self-motivated employees? And I think that management, as our job, should be to help direct the employee towards getting there. We should provide the environment, and we should direct the employee on how to get there. So if we want to grow people, here in my picture we're growing plants, and I think as managers we should have a mindset of growing people. So if we're going to have an environment where they can have autonomy, mastery, and trust, and purpose, it is going to be a trust environment. It is not going to be a control environment. But trust is earned, it's not given. So you need to be able to build your trust between your employees and have a situation of honesty and trust. Trust is earned. And one of the great tools that I found that can help me build trust with my employees and build responsibility is called the responsibility ladder. I got this from Jan Baller, who's the management coach I mentioned earlier. At this point, you should turn to your handout. It'll be much easier to see from the handout than up on the screen. But you should think of the responsibility ladder like an actual ladder. Now, what's one of the first rules of using a ladder? You have to start at the bottom. You cannot start at the top. This is where everybody starts. So assume it's your first day on the job and you don't know anything that you're doing. You are going to not take responsibility, are you? You are going to bring your problems and your decisions to your manager. You are going to act helpless and you're going to wait to be told what to do. Now, if you have employees that are in this situation, or if you find yourself in this situation, you need to ask yourself, what is your responsibility in this? How can I grow? This responsibility ladder is a great tool that can be used to give us a roadmap and know how to help our employees grow in their levels of responsibility. So if you were here in level 1 and you were helpless, well, you should move up to level 2, because when you're climbing a ladder, you can only climb one rung at a time, and that's the second rule of the responsibility ladder. You can only climb one rung at a time. So if you are helpless, climb up to level 2. And this is where the employee says, I will own the responsibility next time. But this time, I want to shadow the manager. I want to get their advice and feedback, and I'm going to take my notes, and I'm going to watch them do it now, and I'm going to do it next time. This is where training programs come into effect. If we're going to have an environment of responsibility and trust, we have to be able to provide our employees with the training necessary to be able to do that. So level 2 says, I will shadow you, and I will do it next time, and I will do my best to learn. But what if you're already here? Well, then you can go up to level 3. And you should challenge your employees to climb up to level 3. This is where the employee wants to discuss the problem with their manager. They identify the possible solutions, and they get the manager's thoughts and as to what to do before they proceed. This is where the collaboration starts. This is where the feedback between the manager and the employee starts. This is when they start to use their critical thinking to discuss the issues with the manager. If you've already gotten somebody there, then where do you go? Level 4. Level 4 is a great place for employees to be, because in level 4, this is where they start thinking it through, and this is where the employee starts generating the options. But the employee still defers to the manager to make the final decision or solve the problem. So you get together and you think of the options. We come up with option A, B, C, and they still defer. Now, if you're in that point, that's a great place for a lot of employees to be. But if you're there and you want to motivate your highly skilled employees to go further, you can get them up to level 5. Now, level 5 is really the sweet spot for management, because this is where the employee starts generating the options, but they recommend a decision to the manager. They still want to discuss the pros and cons, however, and will defer to the manager to make the final decision. But this is where they're thinking it through, they're using their critical thinking abilities, they're generating options, and they're recommending a decision. Level 5 is really about as high as most employees will ever get to, and that's okay. There is a level 6 where the employee generates the options, they make the decision, and they take responsibility for informing the manager, and they go ahead and implement the action or decision without approval. Most employees do not get to level 6. That's usually reserved for CEOs, business owners, or high-level executives. Now, the third rule of the responsibility ladder is that you have to, again, the rule 2 is you have to go one rung at a time, but you have to realize where people are on the ladder as well. It's a tool for identifying where your employees are and how to grow them. So if you're a manager that generally likes to hang out in level 5, where you want your employees to generate options and make recommendations, but your employees are at level 1 or 2, where they're helpless or they just need to talk it over, if you're demanding that they be at level 5, then you will not have happy employees. They will be nervous, they will be a wreck, they won't know what to do. You're probably going to have a lot of employee turnover in these sorts of situations, because a level 5 manager might not be giving the training to the level 1s to get them to grow. But if you realize that your employees are here, this gives you a tool to be able to grow them one rung at a time up towards being that highly responsible, high-performing employee. Again, one rung at a time. Identify it, get them to grow. And if you've worked through this situation with your employees, you're going to have naturally built a trust environment, because you're going to have gone through all of those levels, you're going to know each other, and you're going to know that that employee is responsible for their work. So you're going to have a natural responsibility and trust built that will allow you to let them have autonomy, mastery, and trust in their workplace. So in conclusion, I think we should I'm going to challenge you to rethink the way that you think of management, possibly. If you think of management as control-oriented, as I'm going to tell you what to do, I'm going to put the screws to you if you don't, I'm going to motivate you with a pitchfork and a carrot, I challenge you to rethink that, because I don't think it works in 21st century employment environment. I think we need to be much more of coaches than we are carrot and the stick. I think it's our job as managers to create an environment of responsibility and trust. I think we need to expect our employees to grow. So part of this is that the employee has to grow. It's our job to hold them accountable for doing it and to give them the tools that they can actually do it themselves with our help. And you should allow your employees some autonomy, mastery, and purpose if you have built the environment of trust and responsibility into your workplace. Again, just like our picture here, trust has to be built. It has to be earned. It cannot be given. But if we use these tools, we can allow our employees to have this environment where they will be happy, we will be happy, and they will be highly successful. And I think that's the goal of management. Look forward to finishing up this class along with everybody else.